Welcome back. Oh,
Hey,
welcome back to
thanks for having me back.
It took me a minute. I was like, I wanted to say ADD Masterminds. That happens every once in a while. I want to say welcome to ADD Masterminds, which I pretty much never say. It's not really a guest. Everybody just kind of co-hosts it, but yeah.
Yeah.
So it's only been a week since we last talked. We did that episode talking about your chapter of your book, Social Injustice and income inequality, but it kind of started to branch a bit into entrepreneurship, which I just thought was the most interesting part of your chapter, for me personally, anyways.
Right.
And so I was thinking, like, I've been kind of like, with the whole COVID thing, I've been very hung up on this idea that without purpose, the people perish. And just finding ways to bring hope to people and bring meaning to people. And so, when we talk about passions and finding purpose, I think this is the third podcast that I have said this, but I'm going to say it again. I was reading this book by David Brooks. It's called The Second Mountain. And one of the things he talks about is this artist who's asked, why are you an artist? And the artist said, I love the smell of paint. And I think that is like so key to what entrepreneurship is, because it's like, I really like this. And it's like, you have to have a passion for it, or like, how are you going to chase this? Do you agree with that?
No, I totally agree, and I think the interesting thing about that is it's really easy for people on the outside to judge certain people on their passions and the route that they take and things like that, because they're only looking at it from their perspective. When you talk to somebody else, they're like, no, this is actually the reason why I love doing this. Like for me, like I enjoy theology, I enjoy politics and that sort of thing. But the thing that I've come to realize is that I really enjoy podcasting, just like going through the motions of actually doing it and the conversations that I have, and that almost is more interesting to me than sitting down and studying theology and politics and that sort of thing. So for me, like my motivation is really, I really just love the process of the podcasts and the conversations and all that kind of stuff. So that's really been like my motivation.
We were recording All the World's Problems on Sunday, and with Kevin Millard and Taylor Story. And one of the things, and I can't remember if it was actually in the recording or in the conversation outside of the recording, Kevin said, this is very therapeutic. To podcast is very therapeutic. And I was like, yeah, it totally is. And I think, like, for me, I find that there's so many things I need to get out of my system. I mean, hence conversations that need to be had is the tagline for this podcast, because I'm like, I just need to talk about this. But people in my life day to day don't want to have those conversations with me all the time. So this has become such an outlet. So I'll find somebody and I'm like, oh, I'm passionate about this. Let's talk about this. And so I'm kind of spacing out my talkativeness on guests. It's not really an interview.
You're silent
it's just
the
a
rest
conversation.
of the time.
Yeah. No, I'm not. But I don't know. There's just a lot. There's a lot here. And I mean, like, if you follow me on all of my social medias, you'll notice that I have a ridiculous amount of things to say all the time. And it's just the way I am 24/7. And it's exhausting. And I'm sure it's exhausting to live with me. So much props to my family for putting up with me. Anyways, so I was going to ask, what are you doing that's entrepreneurial?
I mean, so I've got the podcast network, so the GK Podcast Network, and then from there we basically built that up, and I think we've got 10 or 11 shows I think that we carry on the network now. And then from there we branched off. We've got the GK Publishing, so we've got a publishing company. We publish Social Injustice. We're coming out with a new book called 5 Steps to Kill a Nation by Sam Jones. And then from there,
to kill a nation.
Hey, the tagline is and how to stop the bleeding, and I'll just tell you, like, the cover for it And if you go onto my website, gatekeepersonline.com, you'll see the cover. It's probably going to be the most graphic gore you're going to see on a book, and all it is just cartoon like blood, but there's literally a knife stabbing the United States of America with blood pouring out in red, white, and blue. But that's another project that we're doing. And then I'm the co-founder of an organization called the American Conservative Movement, which is we just had our first online conference. We've got that. I'm working on starting a new podcast network, which is going to be in the secular realm. So there's
interesting.
So I've got and then a few more things in the works that are on the down low, but doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I had no idea that last one. So are you kind of on the hush hush about it, or do you have more information to bring?
So basically I've got confirmed we're going to have at least right now 4 confirmed shows on this new podcast network, and it's going to be and so what it's going to be focused on politics, but the thing is, like with the GK we talk politics a lot, but it's always from a Christian perspective.
Right.
With this we're going to have non-Christians on there, we're going to have some Christians on there, and it's almost going to be like a freedom of speech rallying point of let's just throw a bunch of ideas out there, and then we can see what sticks. And then, maybe one show will be, something that's more like pro this, somebody else is against that. And then, hey, why don't we have a combo show and let's debate it? Let's just get ideas out there and talk about things instead of just sticking within our own little group of people. So that's just kind of the thought with that.
You got to cross pollinate. And one of the things I did is I had a friend who kept kind of chiming into my debates over theology, and he's an atheist. And he wants to kind of well, that's dumb. Why do you guys think this and all this stuff, right? And super nice guy, probably, I'd say he may be the smartest human being I've ever met. Just brilliant dude. I was talking to him about, and he said, you need to read the book Sapiens. Because I think it was we were talking about climate change, and he saw a lot of the Christians chime in saying, I don't believe in climate change and all this stuff. And I was just kind of okay, I've looked at the science. I think there's something going on here. You guys are completely denying it because it was almost like people were saying the Bible says we can't possibly destroy the world. So they weren't even looking at the science. They're just it's indestructible. We can do whatever we want, right? And so he was saying, this is scary. You should read Sapiens. This is insanity. So I read Sapiens, and it was so interesting because I was thinking, man, I just want to sit down with this guy and compare our mythologies, if he'll let me say that. Because most Christians wouldn't want to say that either, right? But I'm it's right. We all have stories of how we got here. We all have stories of how we construct meaning. And if I grant to him that he can say mine's a mythology, how about he says his is a mythology? And we'll just talk about our stories. But finding that common ground, because what's really interesting to me and what I've seen arise in the conversations that have happened is I've seen the straw man of what an atheist is. It's the guy in God's Not Dead that's just oh, what? You have cancer? How could you do this to me? You've ruined my day by telling me you have cancer, right? Really? That's what an atheist is. It's good luck. It's almost there's a pornographic view of what an atheist is, whereas atheists have a pornographic view of what Christians are, which is kind of a shocking way to say it. But yeah, we all know porn's not real. Anyway,
but see that's an interesting concept too, and I think a lot of it is rooted in the fact that everybody tends to congregate around ideology and theology and belief systems, right? And and that goes for politics too. And what ends up happening is that we just keep talking to the people that agree with us. So it's we're preaching to the choir all the time, and then I always use this phrase, but then we lob a grenade at somebody else. And then we run back to our little group and get patted on the back for, dropping the bomb on that other group and completely destroying or obliterating them. But it's really easy to always be talking about other people.
Yeah.
But it's a lot more difficult to actually engage with them and engage in their actual argument, not just one that you figured out how to, destroy, even though it's not actually what the other person said.
Well, and what's incredible is finding those commonalities, and you're shocked at how much you actually have in common with people when you actually sit down and have a conversation with them and see them as a human being and recognize it's like, wow, like, because I always find kind of the thing I can have in common with every person is that I want love. They want love. And I believe if we pull at that thread, it will lead us to God. But anyways, so obviously we both have passions for conversation, and that's kind of our entrepreneurial angle. It's really cool that you're branching out into more secular circles. I think that's fascinating. For me, it's just kind of like, I just want to talk to everybody. So, and I want to cross pollinate. Because I've said this before, it's like music. Like if I only listen to one style of music, my music's going to be bland and it's going to sound like everybody else. And as you know, the music I make doesn't sound like anybody else. There's a reason for that, right?
Right.
So with my ideas and the way I think, that's the way it works too. And I come up with these things, but it's because I read so broadly and I talk to people so broadly that my ideas are a little foreign to people, and it's fun. And I like making people uncomfortable. So, and that's what I do, right? So outside of this, for me, what I'm working on right now, I might as well. What am I working on? I've got right now, I'm relaunching Christian Musicians, which is a Facebook group that I created. It has over 1,000 members, which is pretty good for a Facebook group. However, everybody's involved in self-promotion. And so it was supposed to be like a music appreciation group, but instead people just post links to their stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to see your cover of God is an Awesome God. Like, I'm sorry, I don't care. It's boring. It's not inspiring me. I want stuff that inspires me. And so my friend Jeff Hendricks, who I started ADD Masterminds with years ago, I asked him to be admin, and he wanted to like shape up, maybe kick some people out and stuff like that. And we realized, you know what, this is just not going to work. So we're like, let's blow it up and start over. That was Jeff's idea. He's like, let's just blow it up and start over. He's like, would that offend you if I said, let's kill this group? And I'm like, it's 1,000 members, but you know what? It's terrible. So we're going to pull the plug on it. This Saturday, we're pulling the plug. Actually, when this releases, that group will no longer exist. So we created a new CMM, and we created a CMM page. So the idea is that the CMM group will be a place for people to actually talk about what inspires them. And hopefully we can inspire each other with those different, kind of like we're talking about with different ideas and cross-pollinating. Artistically, let's get some different ideas going. The CMM page is supposed to post the results of those discussions so that we can inspire people. So if you just to find some good music out there, follow CMM page. If you want to share some good music, do that, but not yours. So then it was like the question came, well, what if I want to network? What if I want to create? And that's where Air Smudge comes in. So basically, Air Smudge is my artist collaborative where artists help other artists launch their work. And so basically we took this situation where we had 1,000 people that were going in the wrong direction, and we decided, okay, there's a need here. These people want to do self-promotion. They want to network. They want someone to help them with their work. Okay, well, we're going to tell them, go to Air Smudge. And then the rest of the people that actually want to do music appreciation, that's what the other two outlets are for. And so it's kind of interesting. I'm like, I know we're not going to have 1,000 people when it's all done, because they're just like, we posted a video explaining it all, and if they didn't watch the video, they're not going to know we're pulling the plug. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of the big thing. I'm also working for a small company, which is a consulting company. And so it's kind of interesting because I went from big business to working for this small consulting company that I've always been working through, but I was contracted to a big business, right? So I was kind of being all corporate, and now I'm back to a small company. And so I feel like this entrepreneurial draw is kind of hitting my work life too. And so I'm like, what kind of creative things can I do? So I've gone hard at like networking on LinkedIn and doing a lot of social media posting for our company. So if you want to know about COVID, I can hook you up. Yeah. So one thing I was kind of thinking about is generalists versus specialists. I think we have a tendency to put specialists on a pedestal, like to say that that guy's a theologian, he's he's an expert on this, and it's great to pull them into your podcast or whatever. But like when you're building something, if you're going to build a business, if you're going to build your podcast network, do you use generalists and specialists?
For me, I would say a little of both.
Yeah.
It's one. I think you do need the specialist, and you do need the generalist. So like for example, growing up when I was playing basketball in high school, and I took the specialist route, right? So my specialty was outside shooting. So basically for me, my coach told me all the way junior and senior year of high school, it was basically I had free reign to shoot anywhere inside a half court, because that was basically like my range. So I had built up, that was my specialty. I was okay at other things, but my go-to thing and my hook when I was trying to get recruited for college was I can shoot 3-pointers, right? So, but the thing is that I had a lot of friends that were better than me at other things, but they weren't specialists, and so they weren't able to get that hook to play in college. Whereas for me, colleges were looking at me because I could shoot 3-pointers, so I was a specialist. They're always looking for specialists. I feel like to a certain degree, though, what ends up happening if you only surround yourselves with specialists is you get a lot of chaos, and you get a lot of people that can't necessarily go outside of their own little range. They get pigeonholed. Like when you're in podcasting, if all you focus on is attacking the charismatics and destroying their arguments, okay, so what happens if you actually ultimately destroy all the charismatics' theology and they go away? Now what? Now you're like, I have nothing to talk about. And so from there, you kind of need to branch out a little bit. And so I think that there's a little bit of both, I think, when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, what's really interesting, I read the book, The Death of Expertise. I'll link that in the show notes. Great book. Because it talks a lot about and a lot of this is kind of like post-Trump stuff, where, like Trump kind of casted doubt on a lot of people that are considered experts. And that's kind of created this momentum where there's kind of a contingent of our society that's just like, I don't care what the experts say. Right. And we're running into that a lot of times. So it's like when to trust an expert is a whole new question. Right. Because I think we used to live in a society where we trusted the expert always all the time. And people are like, well, that's stupid. The experts are wrong sometimes. And now we're kind of like, well, I don't know if I like this expert. I'm going to go with this other expert. And it's like you can pick an expert that's going to say whatever you want. Right. And so anyways, great book. But one of the things he said that I thought was so fascinating, because he was really mostly pro-expert until he got to this. And he said, if you have a doctor and they're very knowledgeable, people trust what they have to say. I mean, they went to school forever, right? But then that doctor goes outside their area of expertise. What the tendency for an expert is to apply the same understanding they have in their area of expertise outside of their expertise. And because they have kind of a God complex where everybody listens to what they say, it becomes very dangerous, because it's like they're talking about stuff they don't really understand. So I think that's something to be very wary of with experts. And I think that's where a generalist will be better at problem solving, because it's like they're able to collect ideas. And I know that's something I've been able to do, is like I can do that scientifically, I can do that artistically, which makes me odd, because it's like you're usually either one or the other, right? So
yeah, well, that was one of my things too, is like, within the business world, I've always done a little bit of everything, right?
Yeah.
But I've never really fit into one specific title or one specific career path, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like the last time I was out, looking for a job and all that kind of stuff, you're just kind of like, okay, I could kind of do that, but
Mm.
I don't necessarily have like 15 years going down the website development aspect. Although I can build websites, I build gatekeepers, I build a bunch of different things, and so there becomes this thing of, I feel like to a certain degree I've become somewhat of a generalist myself,
Mm-hmm.
and where I do a lot of things, but I'm not just like a one-track mind. But I feel like with the things that I'm doing, that's been to my benefit, because I have at least somewhat of an understanding of the majority of the things that need to get done until I can build to the point to where I can start to delegate.
Yes. I want to get to that point, to delegate. And I think one of the things that's been very fortunate for me is that I did this, when I was doing the podcasting, I was doing, a little bit of that. I don't CMM didn't really take up my time. Lately it has been, because I'm creating work for myself. Um, which I do very well. It says I'm an expert at creating work for myself. And I was like, I have no time for music. I want to write, but I have no time for music. And right now I'm using all my brain power to do all my social media stuff and all my podcasting stuff, and I'll get my ideas out that way. And then my son, who's now my producer, shows me this track. And when I heard it, it all came together, because I had this idea for a song called Monkey with a Gun. But he's like, hey, listen to this. And I listened to it. And I'm like, that's Monkey with a Gun. Like, I wanted to write this song, but I just never had time to do it. And then I realized, if he makes all the tracks for me, I could make an entire album. And we did, right? And we're still working on getting it out. But it's like, I was able to delegate, and delegation is such a huge thing. It's like when you find someone you trust to do something. And I mean, I'm at the point now where I look at what he creates and I'm like, I don't even know how to create this. So I can delegate it to him. It's phenomenal. Um, so when we talk about back to generalists, so Charles Babbage, I want to say Charles Cabbage, but it's Charles Babbage. His invention of computational machines was powered by punch cards, inspired by his knowledge of the silk weaving industry, which used cards with holes in them to make patterns in silk fabric. So this guy, being a generalist, it's like, okay, I'm going to be a computer programmer, but I've also worked with silk fabric. It's like, who knew? Like, how could that solve something? Another example, Henry Ford's revolutionary idea of car manufacturing assembly line was inspired by Singer sewing machines and meat packing plants. Actually, that's really interesting. I didn't make this connection before, because then McDonald's did the same thing. They copied, so it went back to food again, right?
Yeah.
Because they basically copied Ford's method. Ah, man, there's something I'm just so excited to talk entrepreneurship. It's like creativity. It's like, let's just dream up ideas. Go forward and execute them, listeners. We've got so many ideas here.
Yeah. Well, and see, and that's the beauty, I think, of entrepreneurism and having that kind of mentality, is that you can literally have any kind of idea you want, and then you can just go out and make it happen. Sometimes, and that's the thing about being an entrepreneur. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Maybe sometimes it's that it's not working because you have to make an adjustment to be able to make it to work. But it's a lot of problem solving, and it's a lot of, like, obviously there will be frustration. There will be, it's a lot more difficult than just being an employee. But the payoff, I think, is better, because number one, you're doing your passion. Number two, I mean, you can actually control your future.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas as an employee, you are stuck at the whims of somebody else.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the benefits of trying to, control your own business and be entrepreneurial like that.
Yeah. And I mean, I think part of it too is understanding what success looks like. Because I think this is similar to the way ministry is done too. Because you've got like these people like I think it was Joyce Meyer. Somebody was talking about how they were at a conference and there was Joyce Meyer speaking. And Joyce Meyer said, like, and I'm not trying to bash Joyce Meyer at all. I'm just going to wait for this. No. But this guy was at a conference and he said, like, Joyce Meyer was speaking and she's like, I had a Bible study and only 5 people showed up to it. And I was like, God, what am I doing wrong? And this person, I'm pretty sure it was Joey Svensson that said this. And he's like, I'm at this conference and I'm like thinking, why do you think you're doing something wrong? Because you only have 5 people. And it's like, it's not a ministry until you have 1,000 people, like, right? Yeah. And it's like this idea of it has to be huge, go big or go home. And it's like, no, it doesn't. Like, it doesn't at all. Like, if you, and I love what Jimmy Humphrey says, dare to dream small. What is wrong with having a Bible study with only 5 people? I had a Bible study with only 1 person. I've used that as my measuring stick now for everything I do. I'm like, wow, I got 30 listens on this podcast. That's a lot more than 1, right? Yeah. And it's like, and I think that, when we talk about a business, it's like, okay, I have a business idea. I want to, what does success look like? Well, success looks like 1 person buying your product, 2, 3, 50. Like, how many people need to buy your product? And it's like, if you start small and be surprised if it goes big, I think that's a great way to go.
Yeah. Well, and also too, you can set up your business model around that too.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things about that is that I feel like everybody always tries to compete with the Amazons or the Spotifys or the Walmarts or whatever it is. It's like, no, you can set up a business model completely separate. Like for example, within the podcasting world, the way that people make money, like the big podcasters is they do like affiliate marketing or they'll do advertising or things like that. Now, one of the things with like affiliate marketing is like a lot of times like you'll get a code, you share a code, and then use this code, you get 10% off, and then they'll pay you like a 10 or 20% commission, right? If it's a $20 product, you're making maybe $2, $3 per sale. That takes a lot of people to be able to support yourself. So like for me, my business model, let's say, was okay. So why don't we just promote our own products? Let's put out good quality products that we believe in, like our book, Social Injustice. Right. And then that's the product that now that we're promoting with our podcast. So instead of making $2 on a sale, we're bringing in $20. And I'm not gouging anybody. I'm not taking anything away from anybody from that perspective. But it's just you can set up your business model in a particular way to make it to where you don't have to have 1 million followers. You can make a pretty good income on, let's say if we could build up to 1,000 people that like to listen to our podcast, we could make a decent income if we set it up right and we're not taking advantage of people to where we feel like we're just gouging them and begging them for money all the time. And so that's just kind of like been my mentality of how can I make it to where I can just have a small group of people that are consistent, that they want to be able to support us and that sort of thing because they believe in what we're doing. Yeah. And then find a business model that fits that. I'm not looking for 1 million people, although 1 million people I'm not going to turn away, but that's not my business model, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And my business model, and maybe I'm just not courageous enough, but my business model is 0 overhead. And then if I make any money, I am shocked. And so, I mean, like with, ADD Masterminds, I've been able to get free hosting for the podcast. The Bridge Livwat album cost me nothing to create. And I got free distribution through Amuse. Eventually, I'm going to write a book, and that book will be released on Amazon because I can get it published for free. I can self-publish, and I only have to, like, they're gonna take 10% of my profits. So I'm like, well, whatever, right? And so, I mean, there's ways to do like a 0 overhead business model. And I mean, part of it maybe because I don't have enough faith in myself to think it's gonna make money. But I don't know. Like, I don't know what what I'm doing making money actually looks like. you know, like my hope would be that one day someone would want me to speak and they would pay me to speak because I think it would be fun to stand in front of a crowd and just ramble. But yeah, and then I mean music too. I think it's like if somebody wanted me to tour or whatever, and it's kind of funny because the first album is a lot more digital. The next album will have more of an analog sound, so I think it might be a good one to do with a live band. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, but see, like those things are things that you could be able to monetize in a way where you're not. Again, you're not price gouging anybody. You're not taking advantage of anybody. You know what I mean? But
No.
you can still monetize things to be able to support your passion, your dream, your long term, that sort of thing.
Well, and I think part of it too is like I think that like in performing, in podcasting itself, there's not really money there. So it's like, what is the byproduct of that? And I think like probably out of all the ideas I have right now, I think the best idea I've got that could make money is air smudge. Because I think, like if you start with entry-level artists and you say to them, hey, you want to get produced for free? I'll produce you. Hey, you want to get published for free? I'll publish you. Oh, you want to launch a podcast? I'll make music for you. I'll do sonic branding. I'll do all this stuff for free. And the end game is that if any of these people actually are better business people and figure out how to make money at it, I'm going to say, hey, can you remember Air Smudge? Right? And
there you go.
Out of actually gratitude of like, wow, Air Smudge did something awesome for me, they can decide how much they want to donate to the cause. And I'm like, if somebody makes it big, if this becomes huge and what we're doing is so good that we helped launch some huge names, it will make money and I'll be doing it full time. If not, I just helped a couple friends and I had fun doing it. So I'm always looking at how will it fail? Am I okay with that? And maybe, I don't know if that's the best way of looking at it, because usually people are like, oh, just quit your job and go do something, right? But I'm very much along the lines of like when I taught my kids how to go on the monkey bars, I was like, okay, stand on the edge and jump off. And they jump off. And I'm like, see, that's not so bad. That's what it's going to be like if you fall. So then they go on the monkey bars and they know exactly what it's going to feel like to fall because it's the same height, right? And so that's kind of the way I look at it. And so it's interesting to me because your business model is like, did you have to put a lot in, for overhead to make the book?
Did a little bit with the books. Because I went the traditional like printing route and that sort of thing. But that was really the only real major expense, like with that, there was, cost involved with printing, there was dealing with layout, some with editing, things like that. But, I wanted to make sure, okay, I'm putting out something that's quality, that when somebody looks at it, they're like, okay, that's a legit book. It's not just some Joe Schmo guy that did it in his garage and, glued it together with super glue, So for me, I was like, okay, so let's put some out quality if we're going to do this long term. But I think for me, one of the interesting things, and this is one of the things I was writing about in my chapter on income inequality that was talking about entrepreneurship and things like that, is that society, I feel like, trains up people to be employees from elementary school all the way through. And it's always the teacher is the boss. The students are the employees, in the grand scheme of things. And you're supposed to say, yes, sir, no, sir. And you just do whatever they say. It's not, they're not teaching you how to think. And I think one of the things that, like you were saying, when you're teaching them how to do the monkey bars, right? You show them like, look, this is all you're falling if you fall, right? Yes. And I think that's one of the things that is missing today is that people don't know how to fail and they don't know how to learn from their mistakes, because they play basketball, but they don't keep score because they don't want the kids to feel bad for losing the game. It's like, well, maybe losing the game will be a life lesson to fix what you did wrong so that way you can get better. And I feel like the same thing can apply to business and entrepreneurship as well.
Well, and I mean, schools should be teaching us how to think. And I think it's kind of like my parenting style versus other people's parenting style. I know, there's people that are like, all right, I taught my kid all these rules. These are all the rules. And I'm like, no. You got to teach them concepts. You know, it's like you take the kids to McDonald's. They're being a little rowdy. You sit down with them and you're like, okay, listen, those people over there, they're trying to have a nice dinner. Got that lovely couple over there. They're just trying to have a nice dinner. And when you scream, that kind of ruins their good dinner. Like, don't you think you could just like keep it down a bit for their sake? Which I think is way better than you're embarrassing me. Because I mean, maybe they are a little bit, but for me, I think like, I feel like a lot of the way people teach is because they don't understand their own identity. And it's ruining the teaching profession. Because it's like, if I'm parenting and I'm parenting as if everybody's watching me parent, that's different from me parenting as if like, yeah, you know what? I don't care what any of these people in McDonald's think about me. But I do care about their dining experience. And I'm going to tell my kids that. And so it's like teaching broader concepts. And I think as a teacher, that's what you should be doing too. And it's so easy to get. And I used to teach. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, but I think I remember you mentioning that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so easy to get bogged down in, we must get through this curriculum by the end of the year. And that's what I was bogged down in. And I hated my job because it was like there were very few moments where I could just be me and instill wisdom into these children, right? And so, I mean, like, if I didn't have a curriculum, I would have been an excellent teacher, right? But it's like, and that's why I love the podcast, because I'm like, I'm a teacher, but yeah, I'm teaching what I want to teach. It's fun. But I think, like, and I mean, part of it too is my math background. I'm a math major, and which is, like, for a creative, it's not totally common for someone to be a math major. But I think what's really interesting about it is I kind of apply all of these useless math courses I took to the way I reason. And I'm very calculated in how I look at things. And one of the things I love about mathematics is, like, you learn one concept and you can solve thousands of problems. And I'm like, that is beautiful. And so I want to distill everything down to one little algorithm. And then it's like, oh, okay, you could solve all these problems using this algorithm. So if we could teach people that way and be able to show things that are actually analogous.
Either one will work. It's kind of like GIF and GIF.
But yeah, oh, don't get me started on that. But it's like, if you're able to teach them things that are analogous to, situations they're going to face in life, that's beautiful. And I mean, like, that's why, like, this teaching tool of saying, like, Henry Ford, his revolutionary idea came from sewing machines. What? Like, that's awesome, right? And I mean, one of the things I saw, it's like Henry Ford, he said, if I had asked the public what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Wow.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I mean, and yeah, I don't know. I feel like to a certain degree, it's kind of like what a lot of people do with business is they look at what does everybody want, and I feel like that was a very good point. Like, for example, there was even like Rick Warren went around and before he started his church and was asking everybody, like, what are you looking for in a church? And I know some other people did that too. I think Bill Hybels did it and a few other pastors. Huh. And for me, I'm kind of looking at it like, so you're asking people who don't know Jesus what they want out of Jesus. Why don't we go to Jesus and find out what he wants from us? I feel like that would be the better approach. But one thing that you were mentioning earlier, though, I wanted to touch on is the way you were explaining, like, dealing with like an algorithm and then you can solve like 1,000 problems, right? And you kind of instead of getting super minute, you focus on like the bigger, broader thing, right? Yeah. That's what Jesus did. Like, when you think about it, he was going up against the Pharisees. What did the Pharisees do? The Pharisees were looking at every little minute possible thing that you could possibly do wrong. And it was like, so on Sunday, you're allowed to pick up a grain of sand. Or no, you're not. But on Saturday, you're not allowed to. Like, they would get down to the very minute little little thing, right? And I think it was in Matthew 23 where Jesus like did one of his big full-on rebukes of them, and he was making the point that they weigh out every little tiny little granule of like mint and cumin, but then they're missing the broader thing. Whereas if you look at Jesus' parables and what he talked about, it was broad principles. It was blessed are the poor in spirit. It wasn't when you're in this specific situation, you need to be poor in spirit. It was, here's the general principle, be poor in spirit. And I think that's something that I think that a lot of Christianity misses out on today is the broader principle and then problem solve from there, as opposed to they just jump to, here's how you deal with every specific situation.
Well, and I think that's the problem too I have with ideologies and really theological schools too, like schools of theology. You know, like it's like, well, this is how we read the Bible. And I'm like, yeah, some dude came up with that. And I'm like, that's all well and good. But like, I mean, in real life, you know, I'm going to read this verse and it's going to hit me a different way because the Holy Spirit is using it in a different way today. Right. And it's like, oh, it dawned upon me. Right. And I mean, like, man, signs and wonders, you know, like we would get all charismatic, but it's like, I think like it's knowing the broader concept of who God is. That's what, like, my sheep know my voice, right? Like that's it. It's like, are you in the word? Are you communing with God? Do you know his voice? If you know his voice, you're not going to be sitting there looking at the letter of the law and be like, well, does that line up with my, you know, whatever ism I'm into? And I think the same thing too with like ideologies. And it's like, well, I'm a conservative, therefore I have to look at reality this way. Well, that's the problem. I'm a socialist, so I have to look at reality this way. I mean, what we're encountering right now with COVID is so interesting because it's like, on one hand, you got people who are like, I can't work, I want to work so bad. And it's like, okay, you know, I get it. Can you just wait a bit? Like, just, I know this sucks. Like, I know this sucks and it's hard to understand, but like, we don't want our hospitals to be overwhelmed. But then on the flip side, you've got like these, you know, progressives that are like, yeah, no, just give them money from the government. And they're like, and the people that are like receiving this money are like, this is un-American. I don't want money from the government. And it's like such a complicated situation. And it seems to me that I feel like I'm one of the few that can see what's really going on, that there is like, we have 3 potential epidemics here. We've got COVID that could overwhelm our hospitals. We've got mental illness that is going to be rampant if it isn't already. And we've got poverty, potential poverty going on here, right? And it's like there's all 3 of these happening. And everybody thinks there's a simple solution. Just stay home and watch Netflix. I don't have internet. I can't afford it. Right? Like, it's like, ugh. Yeah. Anyways. But it's like broader concepts help us deal with the minute and understanding, okay, here's the thing. The progressive's going to say the government's the solution. The, you know, capitalist is going to say individual responsibility is the solution. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, both and. And so it's like figuring out what that balance is. You know, so much is balance. And so, anyways, broader concept, love God, love others. Can we do that? And it's like, it all boils down to that. I mean, like, it's like, what is the greatest commandment, right? And it's like, Jesus is just like, love God and love others. And it's like, how can we apply that broadly? Because that basically, that solves everything. You got marriage problems? Love God, love others. How beautiful. That's a beautiful algorithm. I never thought about it as an algorithm, but it is. You're right. Okay. So I just wanted to brainstorm. This is actually what I wanted to do for the whole podcast. And we got like, I don't know, 15 minutes left. So I just wanted to brainstorm ideas of things that are not happening or, you know, gaps that we see in society right now. And I think on the last episode, you and I talked about maybe we should have a local version of Amazon, which could probably deliver even faster because like it's the dude only lives 2 doors down, right?
Yeah. Well, it's like for me, I'm looking at, I think the future, if we actually want to get out of this economic chaos that we're going to be a part of, is going to be, it's going to be small business. It's going to be local business. It's going to be the mom and pop shops.
So
and the thing is that because what's happening now is that and I was talking about this on one of the podcasts earlier today that I was on, was one CEO could make a decision that impacts millions of people across the country because he's trying to protect his one company, because he's got stockholders that he answers to, and so that one man's decision could impact millions, right? Whereas
nobody likes that, nobody wants that to happen. Why is it happening?
Because they're reliant on the big government, on the big corporation for their paycheck, as opposed to being entrepreneurial and taking it upon yourself. Maybe you have a staff of 5 people, right? If you make a decision that's best for the company and it sucks for those 5 people, it sucks for those 5 people, but it's not affecting 1 million people. It's affecting 5. And I think if we could condense this a little bit and get back to shopping local, supporting small businesses and things like that, I think that we could be more nimble and maneuver through a lot of these things a lot easier than when we're dealing with Walmarts and Targets and Costco's and all the big corporations.
Oh my gosh, this is like David and Goliath. We talk about Malcolm Gladwell's take on David and Goliath. He wrote an entire book on this. Sure, I talked to someone on a podcast somewhere. I do so much podcasting.
I know that. See, that's my problem. I've got a podcast I do every morning, and then I've got conversations, and then I'm doing interviews. I'm like, what did I say to who?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's that concept though, that it's like, David and Goliath, and how, like, people think, oh, well, Goliath is big and strong, David was small and weak. And I mean, a lot of times as Christians, we say, oh, it's because he had God on his side. But Malcolm Gladwell kind of like said, hey, there are signs that Goliath was visually impaired because of his giantism. There are signs that he was not limber and he moved very slowly. And he's like, this is the thing, is like, when you apply this to a business mindset, the little guy has an advantage over the big guy. Think about how fast they can change their business model. A corporation does not have the ability to change their business model on a fly. So being small is awesome. I am so thankful that I am small enough on social media. I'm small enough on podcasting that I can say whatever I want and I will not get canceled, because you can't get canceled if you don't exist. It's amazing. Anyways, yeah. So, and you know what's funny is, like, when you say what you said, it sounds like you don't love billionaires, which is like, what? I thought you guys love billionaires, and it's the progressives that hate billionaires. They love millionaires, but they hate billionaires. I don't even understand how that works. But it's like, you're saying we could take down the billionaires through entrepreneurship. Well, not necessarily take them down, but not let them keep the power that they have. And
right,
so instead of, you're not asking the government to take down the billionaires. Right. You're asking the people to take down the billionaires. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, one of the things too is that for me, I'm looking at it as, like everybody always talks about income inequality. Income inequality is an actual thing. Like, you talk all the trash you want about Trump. Trump predicted it in his book, Why We Want You to Be Rich, because he said there's going to be a wider gap, and the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. So if you're going to be one or the other, get on the rich side now, so that way you're not on the poor side, right? But for me, I'm looking at this and I'm looking at it, okay, so if we want to bring back the middle class, we want to condense the gap between the billionaires. What does Bernie Sanders always say? The top 1% of the 1%, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. If we want to condense that, I feel like the progressives and the Democrats are always looking at, how do we take the money from them and then move that down here? Whereas I'm looking at it, how can we bring the people that are in the lower class and in poverty, and how do we bring them up? And I feel like that's the more positive way of doing things. And I think the entrepreneurship is the way to do that, because in all reality, somebody who doesn't have an education, who is broke, has no money, it's gonna be very difficult for them to qualify for $100,000 a year job, right? But they could start a lawnmower business, they could start a house cleaning business, they could do something like that, and then they bring on 2 more people that start working with them, and then 5 more people, and then they turn into their own company. That you don't need an education. Like, that's the thing. You can be creative and you can do things like that and think outside the box, and then you can raise your income level progressively from there.
Okay, like the moment you started saying he could start, I was like thinking he could start cooking meth. And I was just totally going to derail it in the middle. And I was like, oh, I'll wait for him to finish. Now I can derail it.
Exactly.
But I mean, like, but it is, that's exciting to think about. It's like, so I'm going to tell you something. Okay. I work in the oil industry a lot. And this is something I see that's a gap. And I've told a couple people about this. So I think like eventually someone's going to do it. But I'm going to say it on the podcast. Okay. When in the oil industry, they're always doing like quality control, basically testing to see how much water is in their oil and everything. You know what they use? To do their sampling, they have like paper cups that they use, and they're coffee cups. And I'm like, that doesn't seem right. They should have like cups that are dedicated to the process sampling. And when I talked to a guy about this, he's like, yeah, you know what you could do though is like thicker cardboard for hotter samples. And like there's a whole untapped market there. And I can tell you it's industry wide. And I'm like, I'm just not interested in developing this. But if someone wants to develop it, it's a great idea.
Hey, spend 2 years developing it, sell it, become a billionaire, and then you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So I think another thing that like is a big gap during COVID is I think life coaching would be a great thing for someone to do. I don't think you need a qualification. I think I could probably be a life coach. That scares me. Like the idea of like being a life coach. It's like, yeah, no, you should get divorced. No,
no, but really, all that would be asking questions and then pushing people to think outside the box a little bit is really what that would come down to.
Yeah, actually, I'm a pretty agile thinker. I think it would be fun to try that. But yeah, so if you want to get a life coach, just drop me. You know where I am. All right. Yeah. Any other gaps you can think of?
I don't know. I feel like all anybody's got to do, because we are completely out of stock everywhere, would be to figure out a way to never run out of toilet paper and paper towels.
Yes. Well, I think the bidet thing is amazing. So what if there was someone local that made bidets, because it's like really hard to get one, I think now. I haven't tried, but
yeah.
Food delivery is hot. Like there was actually, there was an article on CBC where they were talking about entrepreneurs that are starting right now, which they're like, that's insane to be starting a business right now when the economy is like so dead. And it's like, actually, could there be a better opportunity? And so one of the businesses they talked about was a food delivery service. And I'm like, see, that's finding opportunity. And I mean, like, you're finding an opportunity to help people. I'm not talking about taking advantage of people. Right. I'm talking about finding an opportunity to help people, and you can charge a fair price for it. The other thing was virtual funeral services. And so creating that experience and make it, because I mean, this is huge. We just had a mass shooting in Nova Scotia. I think Nova Scotia. You heard about that?
Yeah, I saw the headline for that. Yeah, that's crazy.
16 people dead. Like so devastating. And it's like, so they're asking our prime minister, like, are you going to change the rules about funeral services? And he's like, there's a lot of people who have died over this time. And this is a massive tragedy, but we can't treat it any differently than we have any other tragedy. I mean, I know people who, his mother passed away. He didn't get to see her before she died because those are the rules, right? It's like, and it's all in the containment of this awful, awful disease, which is mutating. Like, it is insane. Like, this is just nuts. I actually saw, and I don't know how real this is, but I saw an article where they were saying, they were showing photos of victims of this virus, and it got to their liver and actually changed the color of their skin quite a bit darker. And I was like, that. So I think there's, when we talk about like, well, how bad is this? Oh, only 2% of the people die. Even that, you're like, okay, well, think about 250 people. And there's like all the math people doing. It's like, how many people within the 250 people would die? Who are you okay with dying, right? And you could do that. But death is not the only way to measure this. Just like gun violence, death is not the only way to measure it, because there's permanent effects when people get hit with these kinds of tragedies, right? There's PTSD.
Yeah, there really is.
It's insane, right? So, anyways.
No, but I think a lesson that we can take from out of this, because, you know, and I've talked with a lot of people that you know, study a lot of this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the things is that, you know, they're saying, and I think was it the Stanford study that just came out? Was it today or yesterday? I don't know if you saw it.
No,
but I guess basically what they were saying is that there's 50 to 85 times more people that have had coronavirus than we originally thought, through the antibody testing and a lot of things like that, right? So a vast majority more people have had coronavirus over the last however many months than we originally anticipated, which would, in fact, lower the mortality rate, lower the death rate, which would make it, you know, right. So there is that. The other side of it is that when we actually look at who is it actually affecting extremely negatively, because if there's 50 to 85 times more people that are getting coronavirus, the majority of those don't have symptoms, or they have very minimal symptoms.
Right.
So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
actually,
we know that.
It's, so, right. So it's affecting people with diabetes, lung disease, cancer, immune issues, liver issues, things like that. The majority of those diseases are self-induced. And I think that's a lesson that we can come out of that, is for the majority of people, now obviously there's the genetic version, you can't bypass that. But for the majority of people, diabetes is caused by poor diet. For a lot of people, a lot of liver disease is caused by drinking a lot of unhealthy lifestyles. Lung disease a lot of times is created by smoking and, again, unhealthy lifestyles. If we could clean up our act as Americans and as Canadians, and we could live a healthier lifestyle, eating healthy, get rid of the sugar, get rid of the high carb diet, get rid of a lot of the processed foods and things like that, I guarantee you that the death rate would be that much lower, because it's affecting people specifically that have those diseases. And so I've talked with a lot of people in the medical community and people like that, where it's literally they're saying we got to fix this that way. If this happens 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, we don't lose as many people.
Yeah, and hopefully that's what comes of it, is that we see the impetus to live a more healthy lifestyle. Yeah, for a moment there, I'm like, where is he going with this? So we should just let them die. It's their fault, you know? But no, you're right. Like, this is a wake-up call in so many ways. And I mean, like, one of the positives, and I heard this on one of your shows too, is like that more people are reading the Bible, right? People are looking for spirituality. I actually just listened to Chris Locke, is this comedian. You probably see me retweet him all the time. This dude is just ridiculous. And he's got this like podcast now. And I was like, what does a Chris Locke podcast sound like? Because I was kind of like, it's like when McDonald's makes hot dogs and you're like, what does a McDonald's hot dog look like, right? I love Chris Locke, though. That sounds really bad. But it was very like spiritual, new agey, like meditation kind of thing. But it's like stream of conscience. So he was like, he's just like rambling. And I'm not sure if it's comedic or spiritual, but he's like trying to help people in his own way. And it was really interesting. It didn't get like super hokey or anything like that, but I was like, I found it kind of fascinating. I don't know why I went on a tear about that, but that was stream of conscious too, wasn't it?
There you go.
Sometimes the Wax Museum becomes like ADD Masterminds if I don't prepare enough. I didn't put a lot of notes on this, so I thought that's
the fun thing. Like for me, like with my podcast, I think I said this last time. I never do notes. I tried to the first couple of times, and then I'd never look at them, and I'm like, no, we're just gonna do this. And if I don't know what to say, I'm gonna start out and I'm gonna let them tell their story, and then we'll just see which direction this goes. And like today, I interviewed a guy. His name's Dennis Agajanian. And he was a big Christian, musician back in the day. He used to perform with like Johnny Cash, and he would perform with the Billy Graham Crusades, and like people like that. And but like I like his music, but I don't know like a lot about his like story or background or whatever it is. So I'm just like, okay, so we'll start out. You can share your testimony, and then literally then the conversation just goes from I just pick something out of something that he said, and it's like, okay, let's follow that a little bit. And I feel like that's kind of the fun thing about doing some of these podcasts and stuff is it's like I don't feel like you really need to prepare as much. It's just pay attention, and then something will be interesting, and then just follow that rabbit trail.
Well, it's kind of like the Rogan way of podcasting, right? So
yeah.
But I found like the more like if I can do some preparation is helpful. And so I've become I was not preparation at all back in the day. And it was like Doug Watson, he was my co-founder of the Wax Museum. And one day he's just like, "So John, what do you think about feminism?" And I'm like, I didn't know what to say. And it's funny because I wanted to write a chapter of the book on this. On feminism, and I'm like, I still can't do this. it's so complicated. So I'm glad you guys wrote a chapter in your book about it. So Jeff, what's the best way for the audience to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Jeff the GK, and then if you want to check out our website gatekeepersonline.com, and we've got all of our podcasts and blogs and books and just all the good stuff there. And like I was mentioning earlier, we've got the new project, the American Conservative Movement. If you're interested in the political side of things at all, you just go to that website, AmericanConservativeMovement.com, and we're coming out with some pretty fun stuff over there. So it'll be good.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And listeners, find something you're passionate about. It could just be sniffing paint. I mean, no. It could be like just painting and you're okay with the smell of I don't like where that heads.
That's very true.
But find something you're passionate about that won't kill you or make you sick. All right.
There you go.
For listening.